Well, I have 12 o'clock, so let's get started. Thanks to everyone for joining us today for our COVID-19 Resources for Our Communities webinar. I am Sandy Ratliff with Virginia Community Capital, and we're proud to be a partner with Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development and the Virginia Small Business Development Center Network to host these sessions weekly. Our objective each week is to share some of the latest resources and to help our businesses and communities during this pandemic. Before we get started, I wanted to note that in order to keep the webinar flowing and stay within our 1 hour goal, we have muted everyone. However, we want to hear from you and ask that you will post any questions you may have for our presenters to either the Q&A section or to the chat feature, and we will address those at the end of the session. I'm excited about the great lineup that we have today with government partners that's going to share some of the programs and resources that they have to offer through the businesses to businesses and communities during this COVID-19 crisis. First up will be Jody Keenan, who is the Managing Director of the Mason Enterprise Center and State Director of the Small Business Development Centers Networks that is hosted at George Mason University, and I'm sure Jody will tell you more about those centers. Following Jody will be Rebecca Rowe, who is the Associate Director of the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development's Community Revitalization Office. Following will be Elizabeth Walker, who is the State Director of the Virginia for the USDA Rural Development, and joining her is Ann Herring, who is the Community Solutions Specialist with USDA Rural Development. And then closing up the group is Stephen Burson, who is the Manager of the Office of Agriculture and Forestry Development with the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. Thank you each. I know you have so much going on your platter, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today and to share what your organizations have to offer during this COVID pandemic. So, Jody, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if I can get this to work here. Okay, can you see that? Is it showing up?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jody Keenan. I'm the Director of the Small Business Development Center Network in Virginia. We are a resource partner of the U.S. Small Business Administration. We provide one-on-one business advising and training and assistance to companies, small businesses especially, across Virginia. We have a network of 27 local offices. So every city and county has an SBDC available to help your businesses, or if you are a business owner, you yourself and your peers. We're all working remotely these days, so we're still open for business. You can find our local offices on our website at virginiasbdc.org, and you can send in a request for assistance, and one of our advisors will get back to you momentarily to schedule a time to phone call, email, or do a webinar conference like this. I mentioned that we're a partner of the SBA. We are funded in part by SBA and then also local jurisdictions and host organizations around Virginia. We do not, however, have access to the SBA loan process or the portals, so we're able to help you put everything together and apply for those programs, but we aren't able to help you track your place in line, so to speak. So with that, I'll just go into an update on the three disaster financing resources that are available from SBA today. The first is the economic, that goes to the next slide. The first, this is just a loan comparison spreadsheet, if you will. So we're going to talk about the economic injury disaster loan. We'll talk about the EIDL advance. So we'll talk about the PPP. The website at the top here, sba.gov, funding programs, disaster assistance, that link will take you to the site on SBA where all of the details are available. As you are aware, probably, that appropriations have lapsed for both of these programs, the EIDL and the PPP. However, the Senate and the House approved a new tranche of funding, and that legislation is on the president's desk for signature, which he's expected to sign, and it should be reopening these programs today as soon as that happens, or tomorrow. As soon as he signs, the portals will open up again. But I think it's important to understand how these programs work so you're positioned to get in line if you are not already in line. Okay, let's start with the EIDL and the EIDL Advance. These two programs are offered directly from SBA. So you're going to apply on the SBA website, and SBA will make the approval, and SBA and the Department of Treasury will disperse the funds. You can borrow, the programs are available to small businesses with fewer than 500 employees. They're open to sole proprietors, to independent contractors, to private nonprofits, 501c3 organizations, and faith-based organizations. You can apply for up to $2 million. The caveat on that is just before the EIDL program closed, they were maxing out the loan disbursements at $15,000 or 2 months worth of working capital. I don't know that that will be lifted or changed in some way. So just keep that in mind as you're completing the application online. The advance is up to $10,000, and an advance is a grant. It's not repayable. You get that when you get that, whether you receive a full EIDL loan or not. And like I said, it's not repayable. The amount that you'll be eligible for on the EIDL Advance is $1,000 per employee. A full-time employee is equivalent to a part-time employee, so it's really $1,000 per head count on your staff, up to $10,000. The proceeds can be used for payroll, rent, utilities, interest on debt, accounts payable, bills that might have occurred or not been able to get paid prior to the disaster, or as a result of the disaster, excuse me. There's no collateral required for the EIDL for loans up to $25,000. For loans up to $200,000, there's no personal guarantee. The interest rate for nonprofits will be 3.75% for a 30-year term. And for nonprofits, 501c3s, the interest rate is 2.75%, again, a 30-year term. To request the advance, you go online to SBA, you fill out the full EIDL application, which is pretty straightforward. The last question they ask you is, are you requesting an advance? You check yes, I'm requesting an advance. You put in your bank account information, the routing number and the bank account, and then you hit submit. Then you're in the queue, and SBA will follow up with you in due course. That's the EIDL program. Again, economic injury disaster loan, and we're expecting that portal will be live again later today or tomorrow once the president signs.
Jody, can you hit the presentation mode on your PowerPoints? Couples having trouble seeing it, and if you could increase it to presentation mode, I think it will make it large enough for people to see. Look on the bottom of your...
Let's see here. All right, the bottom of...
says...
Yes, yep.
And you...
I can make it bigger. Is that better?
No, can you not hit the presentation mode?
Honestly, I don't see the presentation mode.
See from beginning, click that, or current slide. You just have 2 slides. And see if that'll bring it up to presentation.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, just continue on, and we'll be sharing the presentation slides with everyone.
Yes, the slides will be available. The next program after the EIDL is the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. This is the kind of big kahuna, if you will, because this one has the loan forgiveness feature to it. The PPP is offered by a SBA 7A approved lender. So you should approach the bank that you have a relationship with now, if they're a 7A lender, and visit their website, get the full application information, and apply with your lender directly. If your current lender is not a 7A lender, then you can go to another bank. The caution here, as you probably heard and understand, is that most lenders are only considering current applicants, or excuse me, current customers for the PPP program. There are some lenders who are open for business for non-customers. One in particular in Virginia is the Virginia Community Capital. So you can talk or go to their website for information. This loan is, the maximum amount you can borrow is $10 million, but the amount you're eligible for is based on 2.5 times your average monthly payroll costs. Those payroll costs are capped at $100,000 per employee. Eligible borrowers, again, small businesses with fewer than 500 employees. There are some accommodations for businesses in NAICS Code 72. Those are restaurants, hospitality, lodging facilities. So you can be larger than 500 employees in those cases. Private nonprofits, 501c3s, faith-based organizations are also eligible. The use of proceeds for the P3 loan are intended to be used primarily for payroll. The intent is to help businesses keep your employees on payroll for an 8-week period of time. You can also use up to 25% of the proceeds for these other sources: interest on mortgages, interest on mortgage payments, rent, utilities, and interest on debt incurred prior to February 15th. However, in order for this loan to be 100% forgiven, you need to spend at least 75% of the loan proceeds on payroll. Okay? Collateral is waived, personal guarantees are waived. You don't need to demonstrate that you have applied for credit someplace else. The portion of the loan that is not forgivable, we'll talk about that in a moment, but the portion of the loan, if it's not forgivable, you're borrowing that at 1% with a repayment over 2 years currently. The way you are evidencing the forgivable portion of the loan, you will need to present documentation to your lender after the fact that you covered payroll and any of these other eligible expenses during a defined 8-week period. The 8-week period begins the day the loan is dispersed, or the funds are dispersed to you from the bank, and then it's 8 weeks going forward. You need to maintain consistent staffing levels and consistent compensation levels in order to be eligible for the 100% forgiveness. Any variance from that would impact the amount of money or the amount of the loan that is forgiven. Your lender will provide you that guidance and the documentation expectations that you'll need to present. The loan is not automatically forgiven. You'll need to request from the lender a forgiveness, and that process also is dependent on lender guidance. Okay. That is a quick and brief overview, and perhaps a small print overview, I apologize for that, of these 3 programs. I'm happy to take questions after the fact, and again, this information will be available to you. Let me add one other piece. As we mentioned, the legislation has been approved and we're waiting for that to be signed by the president. You should, if you're not already in the queue with the lender or with SBA, when the SBA portal opens up, you should get in the queue. With the lender, if you're not in the queue, you should start getting those applications. You should start preparing now to submit those applications. It's my understanding, if you've already been in a queue, that the lenders and SBA will kind of pick up with the next application in line once the programs reopen. But you want to get in line if you're not already in line. The money will likely go quickly, so you should move quickly on that front too. Okay, I'll take your questions after that. Thank you.
Okay, Rebecca, you're up.
Okay, is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So in this instance, I really hate following Jody because she has true financial resources to provide people. DHCD, and I apologize if you can hear my dog whining in the background. The majority of our programs our financial resources go to intermediaries, whether those are 501c3 nonprofit organizations that we partner with or localities. And then they set a lot of those local parameters for how the funds would then go to small businesses. So we have very few programs that directly fund small businesses. Again, we work through those intermediaries. What DHCD does really well is capacity building, technical assistance, access to best practices and training. And all of those resources are free. And not only are they free, we like to think of them as being priceless. But I do want to cover quickly a few of the financial resources that we have, and then we'll talk about some of those technical assistance resources as well. So the first is our CDBG program, and we do have some very specific COVID-19 eligible activities. So construction or rehab of structures that will be used for shelters, testing, or manufacturing, training programs for healthcare workers or service industry jobs that are transitioning to delivery services, acquisition costs for telework and telemedicine services, and job creation or business development, especially as it relates to manufacturing of COVID-related materials. So I think with CDBG on the recovery end, we'll be seeing some other activities coming through that program as well. More things like direct assistance to low and moderate income communities, healthcare, childcare, and so on. If you have any questions about that program, the contact information there is Matt Weaver or Rachel Jordan. Another one of our grant programs that is still coming up, Community Business Launch. We did move the deadline from, I think we were looking at April 15th or April 17th for this program, and the new deadline is August 17th. If you're not familiar with Community Business Launch, we make grants of up to $45,000 to localities or Main Street organizations, nonprofits, EDAs, and so on. And this goes to fund training classes for entrepreneurs and small businesses, culminating in writing a small business plan, and then a grant, a pitch night, and then award winners for those grants. So this is something that there's always a lot of excitement around Community Business Launch, and it's really given us a lot of best practices around starting and expanding these kinds of small businesses. Our Industrial Revitalization Fund grants, if you missed that notification earlier this week, we have extended that deadline to July 31st. And some good news for us in the governor's, the most recent budget for the state is that we are not anticipating any cuts to our current funding levels. So both of these programs will still be available going forward. So IRF is for blighted properties with a relationship to an adopted economic development strategy. We're looking for a high degree of readiness. So this program is really meant to fill a gap in financing. So we're really looking for applicants that have as much funding pulled together as possible. And also really looking for a clear end use with significant economic impact. And that economic impact can be secondary or even tertiary impacts. So tell us why this is the right project for your community. If you have questions about any of those programs, please feel free to be in touch with me. So now to our less dollar-driven and more best practices programs. I wanted to direct everyone to our Virginia Main Street blog, and this is virginiamainstreet.com. We are posting about 2 to 3 blogs a week right now. A lot of these are on nonprofit and economic vitality best practices, as well as updates on COVID-19 data and resources that are being made available. We also have a COVID-19 resources page, and I know that Zachary Whitlow on our staff is on the call today, and all credit to him for doing a really great job keeping that up to date. So if you're not following us at virginiamainstreet.com, I highly recommend that you join us there. So some of the resources that we have pushed out this week, National Main Street has done a series of webinars that you can access from our blog. And they also, a couple weeks ago, wrapped up a survey of small businesses. And the results of that survey, both a report and an interactive map, are online and accessible through our blog. So we know that of more than 6,000 responses that they got from small businesses, we had 175 respond from Virginia. And you can click through to that map and drill down and see what those responses are like. So especially if you are looking to put any kind of programming together at a regional or local level, or if you represent an organization that's going to be supporting small businesses, this information is great in really telling you how they are being impacted and what would be of most benefit to them right now. Some other things that you can find on our blog, Downtown Lynchburg Association recently did a webinar on the CARES Act and how that applies very directly to small businesses and to Main Street type nonprofits, and that is Ashley Kirshner pictured there, and you can access that on their YouTube page and through the blog. And then the tips for independent businesses. This is a publication that Gloucester Main Street, Jenny Crittenden, did recently, and it's really about working with small businesses communicating with their landlords as they go through this time, so that it can really be a partnership and hopefully potentially provide some rent relief and to come to terms, because both you and your landlord are being impacted by this crisis right now. So communication is key. Here is an initiative that is coming through on more and more communities that I just really love. Mashita is a restaurant in Harrisonburg, and they have a focus very similar to this meal train that Orange, Virginia is doing, where they are connecting those small restaurants with first responders. So you as the consumer can log on and purchase meals from local restaurants that will then be served to first responders. So in my mind, this is a win-win-win. This allows us to participate in keeping small businesses going. It allows those restaurants to have continued business, and it also provides a benefit to the first responders that Virginia and the country are so reliant on right now. I would also like to direct people to a private Facebook group called Virginia Main Street Network. It's just a small group right now, but I think if we get more people on there, this is a really great way for you to network with other communities, other practitioners around the state. If you have a question, throwing it out there into these groups can be so helpful, so that you don't have to recreate the wheel. You can find out what's happening around the state and how other people are dealing with some of these same issues. Also on our blog, we have our training resources. So we have a webinar that we wrapped up earlier this week on upper story housing. And part 2 of that webinar will be next week with Kathy Frazier. Recently, we did one with Ben Muldrow, communicating to Main Street during crisis. You can access that webinar and the presentation on the training resources tab of the blog. And then the blog itself, again, really working with our partners to make sure that our communities really have the information that is most relevant to you right now. So just highlighted there blog that Katie Davis with Center for Nonprofit Excellence recently did for us. Main Street is a program with a very big umbrella. So we try to make sure that we are providing best practices on a number of levels. And that is the end of the resources that I wanted to share today.
Rebecca, this is Stephen. What kind of resources do you have for dogs?
Well, I put my plate on the floor for him to lick, and that seems to be entertaining him right now. Thanks.
Right. Sorry.
Thanks, Rebecca. I appreciate it. Anne and Elizabeth, you're up.
Okay. Let me start sharing here. Is it working? Well, it disappeared on me. It's up. But on screen.
And
well, we took it bigger. Some has shifted here. Can't do it on my screen. I'll just go it from my other monitor over here. Apologies, everybody, but I'm Ann Hearing with USDA Rural Development, and also on the line with us is our state director here for Virginia, Beth Green, and she'll make a few remarks a little bit later. And certainly want to thank our partners at BCC and DHCD and the Small Business Development Centers for not only putting these things to share with you folks this afternoon, but the good work that we do at USDA Rural Development. And we consider ourselves your partner in prosperity as one of our new taglines. So we'll tell a little bit more about that in a minute. But also greetings from Natural Bridge, Virginia. And I highlight that for several reasons. One, because that's where I'm sitting and I feel blessed to be in a remote work environment that we are under at the moment. And we have not skipped a beat as an agency and continuing to deliver our programs literally from rural America. And my folks out, my friends, I should say, in Southwest Virginia would beg to differ. What's one of the prettiest assets out here. So next time, Mr. Kilgore is going to send me a background shot to use of Natural Tunnel. And I also wanted to highlight that thanks to our friends at the Lexington Visitor Center for sharing some of the Zoom backgrounds that all of us could use in our presentations these days, since we're doing so much Zooming. So it's those creative things, I think, that are getting us through this and making us all better off in the long run. So we hope that you're somewhat familiar with what we do at USDA Rural Development. But if you're not, we will give you a quick education. Now, Sandy, tell me, are you seeing the full slide, or do I need to change the view?
Just hit from the beginning, and that should bring it up to full slide.
Did it do it?
Not. There we go. You're good now.
Yep. Now I have it switched. Wait a minute. Are you seeing the notes side?
No, this is we're seeing your presentation side.
The full thing. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
It switched on me. It's backwards from what it was earlier. So nonetheless, we'll take it and run with it. So we do have, as I indicated, new branding, new colors, and all that good stuff. So let me share our brand new mission statement. It's just a few months old. And it is this: to assist rural communities in creating prosperity so they are self-sustaining and economically thriving through investments that create ladders of opportunity, build regional resilience, and support the growth of emerging markets. And we do that with more than 4 different loans, grants, and guaranteed programs. And I'd like to emphasize, first off, that I'm only speaking about USDA rural development. Many people hear USDA and think all kinds of things. There are about 16 other agencies besides us, and all of that information, of course, is on our departmental website. But we are in rural America only. We do not go into more urbanized areas, and we'll talk a little bit more here shortly. So let me follow along here. Rural development is actually a mission area, and we have 3 different agencies under that umbrella: the Rural Business Cooperative Service, Rural Housing Service, and the Rural Utility Service. We'll talk about those briefly here in just a second. Of course, as a federal agency, we are set up with our national headquarters in Washington, D.C., 4 regions. We're in the Northeast, the southern end of the Northeast. We have 47 state offices, 400 area offices. And then in Virginia, we have 4 area offices and a number of other sub-area offices and satellite offices and things like that. Our main area offices are in Whitfield, Lynchburg, Harrisonburg, and in Cortland. And that's how we deliver the programs that we deliver with a great, our state offices in Richmond. And we deliver all those great programs from all those locations across the Commonwealth. This is the link to our, what we call our matrix of all programs, of almost 50. We could be here for a week talking about all the different programs that we have, but I hope you'll take time to pull that up, and we would certainly love to engage further conversations about all of our programs. Particularly, we're glad to come visit, or even get online and do something like this, and that's one of our favorite things to do, is educate folks about our programs. Okay, so let me briefly get into the agency component. The Rural Business Cooperative Service has a variety of programs, mainly all centered around job retention or job growth. A lot of capacity building things. We, all of our programs, I should say, have guaranteed loans, direct loans, and grants, usually in some fashion or other. Guaranteed loans being the most abundant, typically in the appropriations aspect, because those are actually made by one of our approved lenders and back with our guarantee. Direct lending is a direct loan straight from the U.S. government, and grants, of course, are usually much smaller in nature. And so that's how we deliver all these programs that we have. So back to rural business, they are all centered around small and entrepreneurial business activity and development. Some of those examples are, we have business and industry guaranteed loans, again, made by an approved lender. We have rural energy programs. We have cooperative programs for businesses working under a cooperative type structure. And our popular value-added producer grant program for production agriculture is also falling under that umbrella. So we do some mighty great works in that. If we weren't running for time this morning, I'd give you some great examples, but we'll do that another day. Now, our single family, getting ahead of myself here, our rural housing service has a number of programs in it. Single family housing, where we provide opportunities for home ownership to very low through moderate income level clients. We also have an essential repair component to that for very low income homeowners, existing homeowners. We also have a multifamily housing component. We have about close to 250 complexes around the state that house multifamily tenants, and a great partnership with all those property managers and owners. And we have a guaranteed component to that, and actually building some new structures around the state. We have the largest one in the country so far is right outside of Charlottesville. So we're very proud of that opportunity for housing. That's a little different twist than typical home ownership. Also under Rural Housing Service is our community facility program. Those are essential community services that serve all of us. Some of the examples would be emergency services, of course, education, healthcare, our courthouses, our community centers, fire trucks, police cars, all those kinds of things that serve all of us would fall under that umbrella. So the next agency is the Rural Utilities Service, and as its name depicts, it is just that. Rural utilities provide much needed infrastructure or infrastructure improvements that include water, waste treatment, and electric power and telecommunication services. Many, many years ago, our agency ran electric lines and telephone lines across rural America, much like we're doing right now with broadband. And one of the most important things that we're doing now and have been involved in is our distance learning and telemedicine program. And who would have ever thought that we'd have such a pressing need for that right now? So we're real proud of those efforts. Talk more about that in just a second, by the way. So now we'll move into the COVID-19 related measures. If you look at us as a lending institution, we are one of the largest banks, and of course, as such, have folks that owe us money that are under our umbrella for servicing measures, and we have a great partnership with all them. Which, by the way, I should have mentioned in last fiscal year 2019, just in the state of Virginia, we cranked in a little over $1 billion into Virginia's rural economy with just a few over 60 people. So again, we're proud of those efforts, and again, that was just Virginia. So it takes a village to accomplish all that with all of our partners. But our national office has been great, as well as the department, about keeping the resources rolling with the COVID-19 efforts. We have a website. The department has a website. We have daily updates and stakeholder announcements to not only the folks in rural America, but to our rural lenders that we partner with. There's frequently asked questions out there for borrowers. There are many servicing opportunities that exist normally with having a loan from us, but all those have been highlighted, and some have even been enhanced as a result of the efforts related to the response with the virus. So we hope folks will take a look at that. And the department, as I mentioned, has the COVID-19 website as well, and everything links together. And a new endeavor that we just finished up, I think we announced this last week, is our federal rural resource guide that our Rural Development Innovation Center and our folks in External Affairs produced together. And so been a big highlight with this. The Secretary announced this last week. So again, all online. We hope you'll pull this up and look at it. And this is designed to help communities to maintain and recover throughout the pandemic. So the most important information, that this is the new stuff that we have as a matter that's come down through the CARES Act. We have been blessed to receive some additional funding as a result of that in 3 different categories. One is our Business and Industry Guaranteed Loan Program. We've received an additional, or will receive an additional, $20.5 million in program level authority, which in turn can create a domino effect of $1 billion in overall lending authority. And this, the exact details haven't been announced yet. We're expecting that maybe next week, probably into early May, but it's anticipated that these will be more geared for the smaller type business and industry type loans, more working capital related. It's anticipated that they will potentially have a longer term involved, potentially a deferral, and again, all centered around efforts with the virus. So we are anxiously awaiting to see what those results are going to be, so we can share those final details with you. It's at the Office of Management and Budget right now for release. Next is our Reconnect program. That's our broadband pilot program that we have already been blessed to bring about $70 million to Virginia in over the last year. And we, again, couldn't have done that without all of our partners helping us in that effort.
79.7, Annie.
There you go. So
actually second in the country. So
there we go. So yay, again, because of our partnership efforts, we've been able to do that and feel blessed about that. These dollars are particularly geared for round 1 grant applicants that were not able to get funded. So fortunately, we were able to bring that back around. Next is our distance learning and telemedicine program. We've received an additional $25 million. That was just announced last week, and that application window closes July 13th. And we already here in Virginia had a webinar for the last round and have an additional one coming up on, let's see, May the 13th, I believe it is, whatever the Wednesday of that week in May is. And our hope is that you all, as partners and users of our programs, will help us spread the good word that these opportunities exist. There's some great examples. Here's all of our contact information and ways that we share information. Of course, our state and national websites, both normal as well as to the virus. We are on Twitter. We are on Twitter as a national organization as well as our state page. So we hope you will follow us on Twitter on both so we can follow each other and share our great news. And the red envelope is our Virginia Gov delivery subscription place. We have, over the last several years, made a big push to get folks to self-subscribe to that. So that's the first place that we share information as it rolls around. And that's always at the bottom of our signature lines on email. So we hope you will do that. And this is the link to our Virginia staff directory. It is attached to our state webpage here in Virginia and can get you to any of the staff members that we have all across the state. And we've always had these tools, just highlighting them a little differently now since we're in the total remote work environment. So with that, I will turn it over to Beth and share that Together America Prospers through the result of our partnerships with you guys. And again, we thank you, and we'll turn it over to Beth to give us a few closing remarks. Thanks all.
Okay. Well, Ann, thank you for the presentation, and this worked perfect, Sandy. You never know when you get on what you're going to encounter, but appreciate you putting this together and getting the word out. We will, like Ann mentioned, if you go on to the Gov Delivery tab, and this will be shared with all of you, this PowerPoint, you can go in and actually click exactly what you're interested in. So you could put in Reconnect or Distance Learning Telemedicine Grants. And I want to note that that is just a total grant, not loan. And you will receive information on it. So if you go in there and click on that, we would be able to get you the invitation for the webinar we're having in May. So we'll share that with all of you as well. Our employee directory has everyone's emails, phone numbers, which are all right now transferred to their home phones or cell phones. But it breaks it down by our multifamily housing staff, single family housing staff, business programs, and Ann and I tag team on all the rural utilities. So anything, as Ann mentioned, with the CARES Act, we have money coming in from that. Now, as all of you know, it's the Corona Aid Relief Economic Security Act, but we also have a lot of servicing changes, loan deferrals, a lot of different ways we're trying to help rural communities during this pandemic. So as Ann said, we could talk about our programs all day long, but if you have any specific questions on any programs, contact Ann or myself and we'll get you to the right person. And I appreciate all you guys do as partners, and we couldn't do it without you. So thanks for all you're doing to help rural America and rural Virginia.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you being a part of our webinar today.
Thanks for having us.
I'm learning a lot, and I hope our folks, don't forget, if you have a question for any of our presenters, put that in the Q&A while Stephen gets his presentation put up on the screen.
I'll stop sharing now, Sandy.
Okay.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Stephen Verson with the Virginia Department of Agriculture, Consumer Services. And you can be a little jealous. Mr. Kilgore was talking about natural bridge tunnels. And you look at the picture of where I'm presenting, there's a picture of he and I actually inside natural tunnel. Not Not sure.
Stephen, your slides are not showing up on the screen. They come up for a second and they went off.
How about now?
No.
I'm jealous now, Stephen. You got to show.
Well, there we are in the picture. I'm just
there we go.
The lights are on. Great. Thank you all so much. Again, Stephen Verson, Virginia Department of Agriculture. I'm in a small office there at VDAX called Office of Agriculture and Forestry Development, where we're essentially the economic development arm for the Department of Agriculture. I've got a few slides. I'll go through these pretty quickly, so we'll have a little time for Q&A at the end. Here we go. Like a lot of us, we're trying to figure out how we can, what to make of all the things happening in Washington, how we can take these resources and use them to help our industry. One of the good news about the Paycheck Protection Program is all ag-related businesses are eligible to apply for that program. That's not the case for the EIDL, where those funds are only eligible to certain aquaculture operations, ag co-ops, nurseries, eligible businesses. And wineries, a portion of wineries can also benefit from the EIDL program. There was some funding that in the first CARES Act that went to ag support, primarily through USDA. So Beth, and we really appreciate your presentation. The USDA is such an important partner for this. They have real money out there and making real differences in the lives of our farmers. So we appreciate everything they are doing. So a lot of funding went through some of the existing programs. Something that's particularly exciting was the recent announcement of the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program, which I think some of that information has just come out today even. There's sort of two big chunks of that, as I understand it. And the majority of it is funding going directly to supporters. And I believe people are to work through the USDA Farm Service Agency to access that. These are for producers who have lost revenue because of market inaccessibility through the COVID program. And then there is the USDA Purchase and Distribution Program. They're taking about $3 billion. And this is where companies, private companies, can bid to USDA. I believe the announcement went out today to where they would commit to sourcing food, putting it in boxes, and then distributing that to food banks and other approved destinations. A really innovative way to keep the private sector food system operating during this time. We're hoping for good things for that. We're hoping some Virginia companies are awarded those funds. And again, there's additional funding coming out through food banks and other funds from USDA, making a real big difference. Now, speaking specifically about what's happening at VDAX. So VDAX, like I said, we're a big agency, do a lot of different things. There's a lot of regulations that VDAX administers. And with the governor's executive orders 53 and 55 that impacted, how we do business, a lot of the implementation of those regulations came through VDAX. And so, as you know, there's been a lot of questions about farmers markets. What can you do at a farmers market? What can't you do? Same with grocery stores, same with produce auctions, livestock auctions, and even agritourism operations. VDAX has done a good job of trying to answer all these questions, and they've put them all on one convenient page, our COVID-19 resources page. The link to this is on our website. Then something else that I'm particularly excited about is something new through our APHID program. The APHID, it stands for the Governor's Agriculture and Forestry Industries Development Fund. The APHID fund has two parts. There's a facility grant. These are grants. This program has been going on where we partner with local governments to support new and expanding ag businesses like sawmills or breweries or meat processors, etc. But there's also a planning grant component. These are smaller grants that we award to localities, primarily cities and counties, $20,000 to individual localities, $35,000 to two or more entities that are applying together. And these funds can be used for a wide range of initiatives that would support ag and forestry. some of the really innovative things we're seeing communities do now to assist their small and medium-sized producers who have lost markets because of COVID, who primarily sold directly to consumers or to restaurants. Those folks are really hurting. And so communities are doing some really neat things through drive-through farmers markets, virtual farmers markets, different ways to help connect consumers with these farmers. These are the types of initiatives that we're really looking to fund through this APHID planning grant program. We have some new set of guidelines we expect to roll out maybe as soon as next week that we think will make the program even more attractive and more useful. We have changed what can be considered as eligible match. The funds require a dollar for dollar match from the applicant locality. But under the new guidelines, half of that local match can come from another source, whether it be federal funds, funding from a nonprofit, or other organization. And then of the funds that have to come from the applicant locality, half of those can be an in-kind contribution, typically staff time. For economically distressed localities, about half the localities in Virginia, only 10% of the funding, the match required, has to come from the applicant locality, and those applicants can use other sources for the funds. So we really think that's going to greatly open up the program, make it more usable, help it leverage more funds, and do more good on the ground. We hope we'll have some news for that soon, and we're excited about that. Lastly, we have a financial resources document, which has a lot of commonly used financing resources for ag businesses, as well as some of the COVID-19 specific resources that have come out. Lastly, I want to mention that next week is officially Virginia Farmers Market Week. This is an initiative we are doing in partnership with Virginia Tourism Corporation to get the word out that most Virginia farm markets are open. They're just doing business a little differently. We're encouraging everyone to go out and participate and support your farmers in this new way. Here we've got a picture of Secretary Ring participating in a drive-through farmers market. So that's everything for me. I wanted to save a little time for questions. I appreciate the opportunity to participate today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. I certainly have learned a lot from each of you. We've had a couple of questions that have come up that I want to put out there. Here's one: where will we be able to find the information for the grant that you mentioned? Our drive-through market has been quite successful. However, the staff time and marketing materials are putting us over budget.
Sure. I will put a link to where the new information is going to be. It's on the same APHID planning grant website that we've had. We'll have some new guidelines and official rollout for that soon. If I would also encourage anyone, if they think they would be interested in pursuing a grant like this, let's go ahead and start the conversation now so we can have an application ready to go when the funds roll out. So I'm going to put into the chat box the link to the webpage as well as my email address. And if you're interested in talking about this, please shoot me an email and let's start that conversation.
Okay, great. One other question: is there or will there be a statewide directory of drive-through farmers markets?
This is Stephen. I don't know for sure. I know the Virginia Grown website maintains a list. I'm not sure if it's exhaustive. So that's an excellent question, and I'll look into it and get back to you. Thank you.
Okay. A couple other questions. With the additional allocation of PPP funds, will there be any changes to the percentages allowed for rent versus payroll?
This is Jody Keenan. I'm not expecting that there'll be any changes to that program, not that I've heard.
Okay. Does it matter if you have turnover in personnel as long as you maintain the same staffing levels?
Same staffing levels and compensation levels.
Round of CARES funding allow 501c3s to be eligible for the PPP or EIDL only?
No, they're 501c3s and faith-based organizations are eligible for both PPP and IDA.
Okay. I don't see any other questions right off. To any of our panelists, is there anything else that you would like to add to the conversation today?
If you're looking to the future of how to prepare to reopen your business.
Great. Yeah, this is Stephen. You know, if you have a business, if you are assisting businesses, we are just encouraging everyone to take advantage of the contact lists they've built over time, reaching out to them and letting their customers know that, yes, we're still in business. This is how we're doing business. It takes a little bit of time, but people want to hear from you. So if you have the ability to contact your customers, please do so. They want to hear from you.
And on that note, I'll tag along that Virginia Main Street and the Community Revitalization Office have some resources to help you communicate with your customers, whether that's through social media, your website, or whatever is the right communication tool for you. Would definitely point back to, on the training resources, the webinar with Ben Muldrow, and we have some other publications that we can provide people as well. We are also going to be putting out, I think I mentioned some best practices around starting revolving loan funds and then grant programs for localities that are looking to put money, local money, directly in the hands of small businesses. And would also reiterate that this is, really just a small piece of what DHCD does that I talked about today. So if you have any questions, please feel free to be in touch with me and we will connect you with the right resource.
One other question that just came in: would termination for misconduct or a resignation be considered during the PPP period?
Oh, could you I misunderstood the question. That's a detail you need to check with the lender on how they're going to calculate, how you need to provide evidence for your forgiveness.
For some reason, your audio is coming and going, Jody, but you said to basically check with your lender to see what they require or what their regulations.
Correct.
Okay. I will note that yesterday I was on a call with regional manufacturers and business owners in Southwest Virginia, and several noted that they are planning to set up their own separate checking accounts and business accounts just to regulate and manage the PPP program, so that they can make sure that they're doing right. And because, they want to get that money at no cost. And so they want to make sure that they do everything correctly. And I don't know if you're hearing that from others, Jody, but I just was amused or glad that they were looking at that yesterday.
I've heard the same.
And I don't see any other questions. I want to remind folks that next Friday, well, first of all, our group today will be back with us Tuesday at 6 p.m. So if you know folks that missed the content tonight or today that would find value in it, please share that information. And we will be also sharing the presentation, the PowerPoints from all of our presenters after this session. And we will be also posting this webinar up on the Virginia Community Capital's Facebook page so that you can watch it back later. I want to put in a plug for next Friday's session, and we will have our friends at Virginia Tourism Corporation, Work Confoy, Steve Galliant, and Becky Nave. They're going to be talking about, the tourism industry in Virginia has been hit incredibly hard during the COVID-19 crisis, and they're going to share some of the latest impact data and some current resources that can help our communities through this crisis. So I appreciate all these folks taking your time today to present, and especially those that are joining us thank you for your time, and I hope you found great value in it, in the content. Any other input that any of our panelists would like to add before we close the session?
Say thank you for hosting.
Yeah, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, everybody.
So thanks again. Have a great weekend, everybody. And let's just keep chug along together. Thanks.
Safe.
Bye.
Yeah.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.